Hello world, my name is Tim Ruswick and welcome to another Tim Ruswick video, I guess. We're going to talk about luck and more specifically how to make luck feel fair. This is something I've been working on a ton because I'm making a roguelike. And if you don't know what a roguelike is basically it's a procedural, permadeath based, turn-based grid-like game where really the progression comes from a single run. You go from nothing and you improve your character and you gain a bunch of stuff and then you either win or you die, and if you die you start completely over. And the problem with procedural generation and randomness comes luck, but luck doesn't always feel fair. And so how do you take randomness and put it into a system that feels fair? Because here's the thing, when you're procedurally generating a level, right, you have a lot of control. And early in my whole career of procedural generation, which is not that long, I thought randomness was the key, but it turns out I've spent the last 6 months of the 10-month dev cycle of my game so far pulling the randomness out of the procedural generation. Like random tends to be bad because people don't understand real random. They don't get that if there's a 90% chance to hit something, then literally 10 times in a row you could fail and that's still random. But that doesn't feel fair. That doesn't feel like it should. When people see a 90% chance, they expect that they're going to succeed 90% of the time, right? So making luck feel fair has a lot of different intricacies to it. And I'm going to go through three main things that I've found that can kind of take randomness and make it feel fair. So the first thing I want to talk about is something that I came across in Soren Johnson's podcast. If you haven't heard Designer Notes, it's run by a guy named Soren Johnson. He was the lead designer on Civilization 4, I believe, but he interviews a lot of industry experts, and he talked about this idea of pre-action luck versus post-action luck. And immediately when I heard this, I was like, yes, this is a problem that I have. So the idea is that pre-action luck is luck that happens before you take action. So for example, you might get a random ability, right? Or you might get one of 3 random power-ups, right? Then you have that power-up and that's luck before you took action. Whereas if you look at some of the, some of the more strategy games and stuff like that, they have hit percentages, right? So you would fire a shot at an enemy and then it's got a 50% chance to succeed. That's post-action luck. That's luck that happens after you take action. And the problem is generally pre-action luck all feels awesome, right? Most of the time, like sometimes I really hope I get thing A, but you get thing B, right? But it doesn't actually affect a whole lot. And on the flip side, when you get the negative one, when you get the one you don't want, or you get the one you didn't plan for, or what the luck doesn't go your way, right? You didn't take action yet. So you have the opportunity to re-strategize, replan. And I guess this applies extra to strategy games and games where planning and stuff is involved. But it applies to most games, I think. Whereas post-action luck, it's like, okay, I want my guy to shoot that alien. So I'm going to tell my guy to shoot that alien. That's my intention. That's what I want to happen. But shit, he didn't hit the alien. Right? That feels so much more unfair. That feels so much more bad, right? So just from a purely emotional feel, post-action luck generally has a higher negative impact from what I've seen. And keep in mind too that I'm like learning design as it goes too, so I wouldn't take anything that I say as gospel, but this is just coming from tons of research into this kind of stuff, because making a roguelike, I get to watch hundreds of hours of feedback where people record them playing my game, and like I don't want them to have an emotionally bad time, right? But I can see it in the videos. I do things like that, and I could see that they're frustrated, and that's not what I want. So I've been working on this stuff and trying to learn this stuff. So one of the things I did with my game is I tried to take out as much of post-action luck as I can. And even in scenarios where I feel like it was required, I've always been able to find a pre-action luck alternative to a post-action luck scenario. So what I mean by this, a perfect example would be the firewall in Cyberpunk. So in Cyberpunk, in one of the older builds, when you would get spotted, all of the enemies would come after you, right? Because it's a stealth hacking game. So all of the enemies would come looking for you. When they can't find you, they would increase the threat level. And then the threat level would spawn like a response, right? So like, oh, there's somebody here. We need to up our security. Let's spawn a firewall. And the firewall in the game is a literal wall of fire, right? It's just actual fire because you're in a server and it's all, I thought it was clever. Anyway, it spawns right on top of the person. It spawns like, boom. It's just, you're surrounded by fire. And I thought that was awesome because I was in love with that idea. But what I realized is that, like, because the firewall doesn't always spawn, right? It's a random threat protocol that spawns. It's not always a firewall. Sometimes it spawns an enemy. Sometimes it does weird stuff. It's post-action luck. It's post-action randomness because they did a thing, the game reacted, and then randomness happened. And one of the things that could happen is the firewall, and it would just plop them with fire, and it would literally end runs. Matter of fact, it was so jarring that some people thought it was a bug, even though the game said spawning firewall and then the fire would spawn. But it was just so jarring and instant that people thought it was a bug. So one of the things I did with that, because I felt like that was really important, so in a newer build, the firewall actually gives you warning. So it spawns a firewall, but it says 10 turns until firewall, and it tells you where it's going to go, right? And it shows you little target reticules and icons. Does the same thing. It's post-action luck. It's post-action randomness, right? You made an action, the server reacted, spawned a firewall, but it gave you time to deal with the problem, right? It's the same thing too. Like if you have an enemy that explodes, for example, if you hit it and it explodes, that's really frustrating. If you hit it and then it goes into a little animation where you can tell it's about to explode next turn or in 10 seconds or whatever, that's infinitely more understandable. It's infinitely better because you have a chance to deal with it. And of course, advanced players will know that they're not supposed to hit the thing because it'll explode, even if you make it the bad way. But that doesn't, that intro is important, right? That intro to the game is important. And the problem with luck, especially for newer players, is they don't always understand where that line is. If they do a thing and a thing happens, it may be random, but they don't necessarily know that the first time they play. So making things consistent and showcasing them is really, really important. Now, the second part of this whole luck randomization thing is I realized that pure randomness feels really, 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 really unfair. Pure randomness, excuse me, I have bad sinuses today. Pure randomness, most people don't understand how it works. So like I said, with a 90% chance, people assume that 9 times out of 10, they're going to succeed. But that's not actually how it works, right? They don't actually see that real random can fail that 90% chance 10 times in a row without, like, that's random. That's how it works. It's the same chance every time. And the chance doesn't go up, but they expect it to go up, right? They have a 90% chance and they fail it. They expect the next one to succeed. That's not how math works, but that's how they expect it to work. So one of the things I've realized in game design is a lot of my designs, I don't actually design. I make a thing and people don't know how to interact with it, but they interact with it in one way. They think it works a certain way. So I end up just making it the way that they think it works. A lot of times it's just as good as what I try to design, and it takes my ego out of it because I don't really care that I made the thing or they made the thing, whatever. But if that's how they think it works, I'm going to make it easier. Just make it how they think it works, right? So I think the same thing applies to random. Is like, Especially for loot drop percentages. There are tons of GDC talks on this and stuff too for like MMOs. Players get so frustrated if there is a high drop rate for an item and they run the thing 10 times and they don't get the item, right? So what a lot of MMOs do, Diablo, things like that, they increase the drop rate as you go on. So if it's a 50% drop rate and you play the raid or whatever, you don't get the item, then it goes up to 60% the next time you play the raid, and then 70% until the item drops, then it goes back down to 50%. That is really, really, really powerful. That's a really powerful way to make luck less random, because pure random means that a 50% drop rate, somebody can run that 100 times in a row and not get the item. And you don't want that. That's not fun, right? I mean, it can create a very strong emotional response when you get the item. Like if you ever played Destiny 1, you try to get a Galahorn, okay, that's a whole deal. I had to wait for Xur to show up to get a Galahorn, and that was 2 weeks before Destiny came out or some shit. Or before Destiny 2 came out. That was crazy. But it's really, really interesting that games don't have to be mathematically correct. They don't have to be the perfect way. There is no perfect way. And if you think about them, they are experiences. And if your game has randomness or luck or any of these things in them, the only reason that those things exist is for the experience. So you should tailor them to the best experience for your players, right? And that includes figuring out post-action versus pre-action luck. That includes figuring out fake random, right? Making random work the way that players think it does versus the way that it mathematically works. Those are just things that I think are important. And the third and final thing that I realized working on all those games and stuff is it kind of goes along with point 2, and I think it's maybe a little more relevant to roguelikes specifically, but I've realized that capping how unfair the game can be is really, really important. And sometimes crazy random luck would have it that the player just gets destroyed by 10 million things, right? And if your game has a situation where there are a ton of enemies coming at you, throwing things in the player's favor when it should be random, when it should be up to chance, when it should be up to luck, is generally a good idea. So a good example of this in my game is the fire again. The fire would randomly spread from tile to tile every turn, and sometimes fire could spread twice to your tile. And that's perfectly within the rules of the game. That's how the fire works. If you were adjacent to 2 different fire tiles, both of them could spread to your tile and hit you twice per turn, because it was random, right? But players felt they didn't know what was going on. They're like, why did I get hit twice by the fire? That's not fair. What's going on, right? And I realized that compounded with the fact that enemies could attack you. You could be on a trap that would hurt you, right? You could get hit 3 or 4 times, which, you know, at a max health of 5 would be 80% of your health. You could get 80% of your health taken in one turn that lasts 200 milliseconds. So what I did was I made it to where you can't take more than 1 damage per turn, right? You can't, if 2 fires spread to you and you already got hit by fire, you can't get hit by fire again. And a lot of games do this. Well, there's like invulnerability periods once you get hit, right? Like you get hit once and like you blink or you fade for like 2 seconds to make sure that you can't get hit again. I think that's, even though when we say fair, when we say let's make it fair, really it's super fair that they take all the damage that they're supposed to get, right? But when I say fair, what I mean is let's make it to where the players feel like it's fair, right? Not actual fair. Because actual fair is like, oh, you're here, this is the system works like this, it's completely fair whatever they do, right? Like, but in their mind, they're playing this and like, oh, I was just moving along and then all of a sudden I got hit twice. That's a bug. It's broken. I don't like that. Whatever. It's frustrating. So allowing them to only get hit once, or having some kind of invulnerability period especially for that kind of stuff, or having, like, if you have an FTL type of game with a random event, don't have the random event like just completely derail your thing, right? Like, I was playing this game called Out There, which is similar to FTL, but it's a lot more resource based, and I love that game so much. You collect resources from these planets and you need fuel and stuff to survive, and there's these random events, so you have to work your way through a star system, right? And you want to follow a specific star system path to get to where you're going, because if you go down a wrong path, you'll run out of resources and you can't get anywhere, and sometimes stars aren't connected to any other stars in that path. So it sucks. You want to make sure you pick your path. But then there's random events that like will randomly teleport you out to the middle of nowhere with no like stars that you can connect to, which is stupid. That's random. That kills my entire run. That is unfair to me. That's post-action randomness that literally destroys my entire run. That's stupid. That's not fair in a player's perspective, right? In the game world, sure, there's teleportations and there's aliens that can do all kinds of stuff. With the systems, it's fair. But from a player's perspective, that's stupid and I hate it. You know what I mean? So those are my things on randomness. I hope you found it useful. Randomness is very, very powerful, and it's something that you can use for all sorts of things, from engagement to progression systems to replayability. Like, there's so much you can use it for, and I really hope that you use it to its best state, to your best ability, and make players love it. But with these three things, hopefully you can make randomness feel a little bit more fair. I want to say thank you to the patrons for making this possible. I really, really love you all. I really, really appreciate you guys helping me out and letting me continue to do these videos. I really, really love doing this stuff. I love the community over on Discord, which, by the way, if you're not part of the Discord, click the link down below. Join the Discord. Join thousands of game developers all over the world where we hang out and talk game design and have game jams and all kinds of events. We do Feedback Friday, the first Friday of every month, where I play your games live on stream. Hit up my streams. Come say hi. And yeah, I appreciate everybody being a part of it. My name is Tim Roswick, and I will see you again next week.